in the infinite silence between galaxies, where suns are born and empires vanish. A single mistake can rewrite destiny. Orion Vale never imagined he'd find purpose or love on a planet no human had ever named. Welcome to my channel, the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. As the alien sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie purple glow across the bioluminescent jungle, Captain Orion Vale stumbled through the dense foliage, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The crash landing had left him battered and disoriented, but alive. He pushed aside a large, pulsating leaf, its edges glowing a soft blue, and found himself face to face with a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. The beast towered over him, its 6 legs ending in razor-sharp claws that dug into the spongy ground. Its elongated head swiveled towards Orion, multiple eyes blinking in rapid succession. Orion's hand instinctively went to his hip, grasping for a weapon that wasn't there. "Shit," he muttered, slowly backing away. The creature let out a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate the very air around them, just as Orion was preparing to make a desperate run for it. A blur of blue flashed before his eyes. A figure, lithe and graceful, leapt from the trees above, landing between Orion and the beast. The newcomer brandished a weapon that crackled with energy, its light illuminating features that were decidedly not human. The alien warrior, for that's what she clearly was, stood tall, her skin a deep sapphire blue that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed with an inner fire as she faced down the predator. "Stay back, human," she hissed over her shoulder, her voice melodic, yet filled with disdain. "Your fragile form would not survive this encounter." Orion bristled at the insult, but remained where he was, watching in awe as the blue-skinned warrior engaged the beast. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, as she ducked and weaved around the creature's attacks. The energy weapon in her hand crackled and sparked, leaving scorch marks on the beast's thick hide. The fight was over in moments. The predator, realizing it was outmatched, retreated into the undergrowth with a final defiant roar. The warrior turned to face Orion, her expression a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "I am Kalis of the Eliari," she said, her chin raised proudly. "And you, human, are trespassing on our world." Orion straightened, trying to ignore the pain in his ribs and the exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm him. "Captain Orion Vale," he replied, meeting her gaze. "I didn't exactly plan on crashing here. My ship—" Kalis cut him off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Your primitive technology is of no concern to us. The question is, what are we to do with you?" Orion's mind raced, searching for the right words to say. He needed help, that much was clear. But this alien, Kalis, seemed far from welcoming. "I'm grateful for your assistance," he began cautiously. "I don't suppose you could point me in the direction of the nearest settlement." Kalis's eyes narrowed, studying him intently. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "It would be unwise to leave you wandering our jungles. You would not survive the night. I will guide you to our city, where your fate will be decided by the elders." Relief washed over Orion, quickly followed by a new wave of apprehension. What kind of fate awaited him in an alien city? Still, it was better than being eaten by whatever monstrosities lurked in this jungle. "Lead the way," he said, gesturing for Kalis to take point. As they set off through the luminous forest, Orion couldn't help but marvel at the alien beauty surrounding them. Flowers that seemed to be made of living crystal chimed softly as they passed, while vines, coiled and uncoiled, of their own accord. In the distance, he could hear the calls of unseen creatures, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and low rumbles. Kalis moved with practiced ease through the dense foliage, occasionally glancing back to ensure Orion was keeping up. Her initial hostility seemed to have faded somewhat, replaced by a grudging curiosity. "Tell me, human," she said, as they navigated a particularly treacherous patch of ground. "What brings your kind to our world? We have long observed your species from afar, but never has one of you set foot on Viralia." Orion carefully picked his way across the uneven terrain, trying to match Kalis's graceful movements. "It wasn't intentional, I can assure you," he replied. "I was on a deep space exploration mission when my ship encountered some kind of anomaly. Next thing I knew, I was hurtling towards your planet." Kalis's brow furrowed, her luminous eyes narrowing. "An anomaly? What kind of anomaly?" Orion shook his head. "I'm not entirely sure. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. A tear in space itself, maybe. My instruments went haywire, and then..." He trailed off, the memory of those terrifying moments flooding back. The alarms blaring, the ship shuddering around him as it plummeted through Viralia's atmosphere. For a moment he had been certain he was going to die. Kalis seemed to sense his distress. Her expression softened slightly, though her voice remained guarded. "Such occurrences are not unheard of in this sector of space. Your survival is impressive for one of your kind." Orion couldn't help but chuckle at that. "Thanks, I think. We humans are tougher than we look." As they continued their journey, the jungle began to thin out, giving way to a landscape that took Orion's breath away. Towering spires of crystal rose from the ground, their surfaces reflecting and refracting the bioluminescent light of the surrounding flora. In the distance, he could make out structures that seemed to be a blend of organic growth and advanced technology. "Welcome to Amalthea," Kalis announced, a hint of pride in her voice. "The greatest city of the Eliari people." Orion stood in awe, trying to take in the sheer alien beauty of the place. As they approached the outskirts of the city, he began to notice other Eliaris watching their approach. Like Kalis, they were tall and blue-skinned, with an otherworldly grace to their movements. Unlike Kalis, however, their expressions were far from welcoming. Whispers and murmurs followed them as Kalis led Orion through the winding streets of Amalthea. He caught snatches of conversation in a language he couldn't understand, but the tone was clear enough. Surprise, disgust, and no small amount of fear. "They're not too fond of visitors, are they?" Orion muttered to Kalis. She glanced back at him, her expression unreadable. "You are the first human to set foot in our city in all of recorded history. Can you blame them for their apprehension?" Before Orion could respond, they arrived at a vast plaza dominated by a structure that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. Its facets caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the ground. "The Hall of Elders," Kalis explained. "They will decide your fate." As they ascended the steps leading to the entrance, Orion felt a growing sense of unease. What exactly did deciding his fate entail? He was about to find out. The interior of the hall was a marvel of alien architecture. The walls seemed to pulse with an inner light, and the air was filled with a soft, melodic hum that seemed to resonate in Orion's very bones. At the far end of the chamber, seated on crystalline thrones, were 5 Amelins who exuded an aura of ancient wisdom and power. Kalis bowed deeply, and Orion hastily followed suit. When he straightened, he found himself under the scrutiny of 10 luminous eyes. The central elder, distinguished by elaborate markings on his azure skin, spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. Kalis of the warrior caste, explain the presence of this human in our sacred halls. Kalis stepped forward, her posture rigid. Honored elders, I encountered this human in the outer reaches of the whispering jungle. His vessel crashed upon our world, and I deemed it prudent to bring him before you rather than leave him to the mercies of our wilds. The elder's gaze shifted to Orion, who fought the urge to squirm under the intensity of that alien stare. And what say you, human? What brings you to Viralia? Orion took a deep breath, acutely aware that his next words could determine whether he lived or died. Respected elders of the Amalin, he began, hoping his voice sounded steadier than he felt. My presence on your world was not intentional. I am Captain Orion Vale of the Earth exploration vessel Solace. We were on a mission to explore uncharted regions of space when we encountered an anomaly that sent us spiraling towards your planet. I am the sole survivor of the crash. The elders exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable to Orion's human eyes. The central elder spoke again, his voice resonating through the chamber. Your arrival on Viralia is unprecedented. We have long observed your species from afar, but never has a human set foot on our world. Your presence here raises many questions and not a few concerns. Orion nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I assure you, I mean no harm to your people or your world. I am a scientist and an explorer, not a conqueror or a threat. One of the other elders, a female with intricate patterns swirling across her skin, leaned forward. Pretty words, human. But how can we trust them? How do we know you are not the vanguard of an invasion force? Orion felt a flash of indignation at the accusation, but quickly suppressed it. Anger would not serve him here. With all due respect, if we had the technology or the intention to invade your world, would I be standing here alone, unarmed, and at your mercy? A murmur ran through the chamber at his words. Kalis, still standing beside him, shot him a look that might have been grudging approval. The central elder raised a hand, silencing the whispers. You speak with conviction, Captain Orion Vale, but words alone are not enough to earn our trust. If you wish to remain among us, and I suspect you have little choice in the matter, you must prove yourself worthy. Orion's heart raced. This was his chance. I understand. What would you have me do? The elder's eyes seemed to bore into Orion's soul. You will face a series of trials designed to test your intelligence, strength, and emotional resilience. Should you succeed, you will be granted the right to remain on Viralia until such time as you can be returned to your own kind. Should you fail... He left the sentence unfinished, but Orion could fill in the blanks well enough. I accept your challenge, Orion said, squaring his shoulders. When do we begin? The female elder who had spoken earlier rose from her throne. The trials will commence at dawn. For now, you will be given quarters to rest and prepare. Kalis, as the one who brought him to us, you will be responsible for overseeing the humans' trials. Kalis bowed deeply, though Orion caught a flicker of something. Annoyance, concern, crosser features. As you command, honored elder. As they were dismissed from the hall, Orion's mind was reeling. Trials to prove his worth. It sounded like something out of a fantasy novel, not a first contact situation. But then again, nothing about this situation was following any protocol he'd ever learned. Kalis led him through the winding streets of Amalthea, the curious and often hostile gazes of other Amalins following their every move. Finally, they arrived at a small dwelling carved into the side of a crystal spire. "These will be your quarters," Kayla said, her tone brusque. "I suggest you rest while you can. The trials ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine." As she turned to leave, Orion called out, "Kalis, wait." She paused, looking back at him with those luminous eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, "for saving my life in the jungle and for bringing me here. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm grateful." For a moment, Kalis's stoic expression softened, and Orion caught a glimpse of the person behind the warrior's facade. "Rest well, Orion Vale," she said softly. "You will need all your strength come dawn." As the door closed behind her, Orion sank onto the strange, organic-looking bed. His mind was a whirlwind of questions and fears, but exhaustion soon overtook him. As he drifted off to sleep, his last conscious thought was of Kalis's eyes and the unexpected warmth he had seen in them. The trials, whatever they might be, awaited him at dawn. Orion's sleep was fitful, filled with dreams of alien landscapes and glowing blue eyes. He awoke to a soft chiming sound, the walls of his quarters pulsing with a gentle light. Sitting up, he found a set of clothes laid out for him, a form-fitting bodysuit made of a material he couldn't identify, shimmering with an iridescent sheen. As he dressed, the door to his quarters slid open, revealing Kaylis. She was clad in what appeared to be ceremonial armor, intricate patterns etched into its surface. "It is time," she said simply. Orion nodded, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. "I'm ready." Kalis led him through the city, which was eerily quiet in the pre-dawn light. They arrived at a vast amphitheater carved into the side of a crystal mountain. Thousands of Amelins filled the seats, their collective gaze fixed on Orion as he entered the arena. The 5 elders from the previous day sat in an elevated box, their expressions solemn. The central elder rose, his voice carrying across the arena. "Orion Vale of Earth, you stand before us to prove your worth. 3 trials await you, tests of mind, body, and spirit. Should you succeed in all 3, you will be granted the right to remain among us. Should you fail, your fate will be less fortunate." Orion swallowed hard, but kept his voice steady as he replied, "I understand, and I accept the challenge." The elder nodded. "Then let the trials begin." The first challenge materialized before Orion, a complex 3-dimensional puzzle made of shifting, interlocking pieces. It hovered in the air, glowing with an inner light. "The trial of mind," Kalis explained. "You must solve the puzzle before the light fades." Orion approached the puzzle, his mind racing. The pieces moved and shifted as he watched, forming patterns that seemed to defy logic. He reached out, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as he began to understand the underlying principles. Time seemed to blur as he worked, his fingers dancing across the puzzle's surface. Just as the glow began to dim, the final piece clicked into place. The puzzle pulsed once brightly, then dissolved into motes of light. A murmur ran through the crowd. Kalis's eyes widened slightly, impressed despite herself. "Well done," she murmured, "but do not celebrate yet. The next trial will test your physical prowess." As if on cue, a section of the arena floor slid open, and a massive mechanical construct rose from below. It towered over Orion, its limbs ending in wickedly sharp blades and energy weapons. "The trial of body," the elder announced. "Defeat the Sentinel, or be defeated." Orion's heart pounded as he faced the mechanical monster. He had no weapons, No armor, nothing but his wits and a strange form-fitting suit he wore. The sentinel attacked without warning, its bladed arms slicing through the air where Orion had been standing a split second before. He rolled, narrowly avoiding a blast of energy that scorched the ground. As he dodged and weaved, Orion's mind raced. There had to be a weakness, a way to bring this thing down. He noticed a pattern in its movements, a slight delay between attacks, taking a risk. He feinted left, then darted right as the sentinel's arm came crashing down. In that brief moment of vulnerability, Orion leaped, grabbing onto a protruding piece of the machine's armor. The sentinel thrashed, trying to dislodge him, but Orion held on. He climbed higher, searching for a weak point. There, a small panel pulsing with energy. With all his strength, he pried it open and reached inside. The sentinel froze, then collapsed in a heap of inert metal. Orion stood atop it, panting heavily, his hands singed but triumphant. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and astonished murmurs. Even the elders looked impressed. Kalis approached, a newfound respect in her eyes. "You continue to surprise me, Orion Vale," she said. "But the final trial may prove the most challenging of all." The elder's voice rang out once more. "You have proven your mind and body human, but now comes the true test, the trial of spirit." The arena shimmered and changed, transforming into a vast, ethereal landscape. Swirling mists obscured the boundaries, and the ground beneath Orion's feet seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "The dance of trust," Kalis explained, her voice hushed. "This is a sacred ritual among our people, used to forge deep connections and test the very essence of one's being." Orion looked around, bewildered. "What do I need to do?" Kalis hesitated, then stepped forward. "You will need a partner for this trial. I volunteer to guide you through it." The elder nodded solemnly. "Very well, Kalis of the warrior caste. The fate of this human now rests in both your hands." Orion felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He trusted Kalis more than any other Eliari, but the intensity in her eyes told him this was no simple dance. Kalis extended her hand, and Orion took it. The moment their skin touched, a jolt of energy passed between them. The mists around them began to swirl more rapidly, taking on vibrant hues. "Clear your mind," Kalis instructed. "Let go of your fears, your doubts. Feel the rhythm of Elsyria itself." Orion closed his eyes, taking deep breaths. He became aware of a subtle vibration, a pulse that seemed to emanate from the planet itself. As he focused on it, he felt his body begin to move of its own accord. Kalis led him through a series of intricate movements, their bodies weaving around each other in perfect synchronization. With each step, each gesture, Orion felt a deepening connection not just to Kalis, but to the world around him. Images flashed through his mind, memories that were not his own. He saw Kalis as a child, training relentlessly to become a warrior. He felt her determination, her fears, the loneliness she had never admitted to anyone. In turn, Kalis experienced flashes of Orion's life, the wonder of his first space flight, the pain of losing comrades, the unquenchable curiosity that drove him to explore the unknown. As the dance reached its crescendo, Orion felt as though his very essence was merging with Kalis's. In that moment, all barriers of species and culture fell away. They were simply two beings, connected on the most fundamental level. When the dance finally ended, Orion opened his eyes to find himself and Kalis standing in the center of the arena, their hands still clasped. The entire amphitheater was silent, the Eliaris watching in awe. The elder's voice broke the silence. Never in all our history has an outsider completed the dance of trust with such harmony. Orion Vale, you have passed the final trial. Orion barely heard the words, still reeling from the intensity of the experience. He looked at Kalis, seeing her in a completely new light. The connection between them lingered, a tangible thing that both thrilled and terrified him. Kalis met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and confusion. "How?" she whispered. "How did you?" Before Orion could respond, the elder continued. "You have proven yourself worthy, Orion Vale of Earth. You are granted the right to remain among us, to learn our ways and share your own. But know this, the path you have chosen is not an easy one. There will be those who resist your presence, who fear what your arrival might mean for our people." Orion nodded, finally tearing his eyes away from Kalis to address the elder. "I understand, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. I swear to respect your ways and to use my time here to foster understanding between our peoples." Soon as the crowd began to disperse, murmuring excitedly about what they had witnessed, Kalis pulled Orion aside. "What happened during the dance?" she said, her voice low and intense. "It was unprecedented. The level of connection, the depth of shared experience. It shouldn't have been possible with a non-Eliari." Orion ran a hand through his hair, still trying to process it all. "I don't understand it either, Kalis, but I felt it. I saw your memories, your feelings, and I think you saw mine too." Kalis nodded, her expression a mix of vulnerability and wonder that Orion had never seen before. "I did. I saw your world, your people. I felt your courage, your compassion. Orion, I misjudged you. We all did." Orion reached out, hesitantly placing a hand on her arm. The touch sent a small spark between them, an echo of the profound connection they had shared during the dance. "I think we both learned a lot about each other," he said softly. "And maybe that's the point of all this, to show that despite our differences, we're not so alien to each other, after all." Kalis's eyes met his, and for a moment Orion felt as though he could see right into her soul. The warrior facade had crumbled, revealing a depth of emotion he hadn't thought possible. Their moment was interrupted by the approach of the central elder. "Orion Vale," he said, his voice carrying a new note of respect. "You have surprised us all today. The bond you formed with Kalis during the Dance of Trust is unlike anything we have seen before. It seems there is much we can learn from each other." Orion bowed his head respectfully. "I'm honored by your words, Elder. I promise to do my best to bridge the gap between our peoples." The elder nodded, then turned to Kalis. "And you, Kalis of the warrior caste, your willingness to guide the human through our most sacred ritual shows great courage. The Council has decided that you will be responsible for Orion's integration into our society. Teach him our ways and learn from him in return." Kalis's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly composed herself and bowed deeply. "I accept this responsibility with honor, Elder." As the elder departed, Orion and Kalis were left alone once more. The amphitheater had emptied, leaving them in a strange bubble of quiet amidst the alien beauty of Amalthea. "So," Orion said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips, "it looks like we're going to be spending a lot of time together." Kalis raised an eyebrow, a gesture that looked surprisingly human. "Indeed. I hope you're prepared for a rigorous education in Eliari culture, Orion Vale. Our ways are not easily learned." Orion's smile widened. "I'm always up for a challenge. And maybe I can teach you a thing or two about humans in return." For the first time since they'd met, Kalis's lips curved into a genuine smile. It transformed her face, softening her features and making her even more beautiful. "Perhaps you can. But for now, you need rest. The trials have taken much out of you, whether you realize it or not." As if on cue, Orion felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline that had carried him through the trials was fading, leaving him drained. Kalis led him back to his quarters, her hand occasionally brushing against his as they walked. Each touch sent a small thrill through Orion, a reminder of the connection they now shared. At the door to his room, they paused. "Rest well, Orion," Kalis said softly. "Tomorrow, your true journey on Viralia begins." Orion nodded, fighting the urge to reach out and touch her again. "Thank you, Kalis, for everything." As the door closed behind him, Orion collapsed onto the bed, his mind whirling with the events of the day. He had come to this alien world as a castaway, a stranger in a hostile land. Now he found himself with a place among the Eliaris and a connection with Kalis that defied explanation. As he drifted off to sleep, Orion's last thoughts were of glowing blue eyes and the promise of a new dawn on Viralia. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he was ready to face them, not alone, but with Kalis by his side. The next morning, Orion awoke to find Kalis waiting for him outside his quarters. She was dressed in more casual attire than he had seen her in before, though she still carried herself with the grace and poise of a warrior. "Are you ready to begin your education in the ways of the Eliari?" she asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Orion grinned, feeling more alive and purposeful than he had since crash landing on this alien world. "Lead the way, teacher," he replied. As they set off into the gleaming crystal city, Orion couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and trepidation. The alien world around him was still a mystery, full of wonders and potential dangers. But with Kalis by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their first stop was a vast library, its walls lined with shimmering data crystals that pulsed with stored knowledge. Kalis placed her hand on a central console, and a holographic display sprang to life, filling the air with swirling alien script. "We'll start with the basics of our language," Kalis said, her tone businesslike, but with an undercurrent of warmth that hadn't been there before. "It's complex, but I think you'll find it fascinating." Orion stepped closer to the display, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," he murmured, "like music made visible." Kalis's expression softened. "That's an apt description, actually. Our language is deeply connected to the rhythms of Viralia itself. Each word, each phrase, resonates with the planet's energy." As they delved into the intricacies of the Eliari language, Orion found himself captivated not just by the subject matter, but by Kalis herself. Her passion for her culture shone through, and he found himself wanting to impress her with his quick grasp of the concepts. Hours flew by, and soon the library's ambient lighting shifted to indicate the approach of evening. Orion's head was swimming with new information, but he felt exhilarated rather than overwhelmed. "You're a quick study," Kalis remarked as they left the library. "Perhaps there's hope for you yet, human." Orion chuckled. "High praise indeed. So what's next on the agenda? More language lessons? Eliari history? The finer points of crystal architecture?" Kalis shook her head, a mischievous glint in her eye that Orion found utterly charming. "No, I think it's time we worked on something more physical." Before Orion could respond, Kalis had taken off at a sprint. her life form weaving through the evening crowds with ease. Orion grinned and gave chase, relishing the challenge. They raced through the city, past towering spires and over crystal bridges that hummed with energy. Orion's human physiology was no match for Kalis's Eliari speed and agility, but he pushed himself to keep up, determined not to lose sight of her. Finally, they arrived at a secluded garden filled with alien flora that glowed softly in the twilight. Kalis was waiting for him, barely winded, while Orion bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. "Not bad," Kalis said, her tone approving. "You're more resilient than I expected." Orion straightened up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Thanks, I think. So, was that just for fun or part of my education?" Kalis's expression turned serious. "Both. You need to understand the physical capabilities of our people if you're going to truly integrate into our society." And she hesitated, then continued. "I wanted to see how you'd react to a challenge." Orion met her gaze, sensing there was more to this than a simple fitness test. "And how did I do?" Kalis stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "You didn't give up. Even when it was clear you couldn't catch me, you kept going. That impresses me." The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Orion was acutely aware of how close Kalis was standing, of the way the bioluminescent plants cast a soft glow on her blue skin. "Kalis," he said softly, "about what happened during the dance of trust." She held up a hand, silencing him. "I know. I felt it too. The connection between us, it's not something that can be easily explained or ignored." Orion nodded, relieved that she understood. "So what do we do about it?" Kalis's hand reached out, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence as she placed it on Orion's chest, right over his heart. "We explore it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Carefully. There's still so much we don't understand about each other." Orion covered her hand with his own, marveling at the contrast between their skin tones and the spark of energy that seemed to pass between them at every touch. "I'm willing to take it slow," he said softly. "This is all new territory for both of us." Kalis nodded, her luminous eyes searching his face. For a moment it seemed as though she might say more, but instead she took a step back, composing herself. "We should return to the city. There's still much for you to learn." As they walked back through the glowing gardens, Orion felt a mix of emotions swirling within him. Excitement at the connection he shared with Kalis, apprehension about the challenges that lay ahead, and a deep curiosity about the alien world he now called home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of intense study and exploration. Orion immersed himself in Eliari culture, learning their language, history, and customs with a voraciousness that impressed even the most skeptical elders. Kalis was a constant presence, guiding him through the intricacies of her world with patience and increasingly warmth. Their bond deepened with each passing day. The connection forged during the dance of trust seemed to grow stronger, allowing them to communicate on an almost intuitive level. Orion found himself able to sense Kalis's moods, and she in turn seemed to anticipate his questions before he could voice them. One evening, as they stood atop one of Amalthea's crystal spires, watching the alien sunset paint the sky in hues of purple and green, Kalis turned to Orion with a serious expression. "There's something I need to show you," she said, her voice low and intense. "Something that few outsiders have ever seen." Orion's curiosity was immediately piqued. "What is it?" Kalis took his hand, sending a now familiar tingle up his arm. "The heart of Virelia, the source of our planet's energy, and the reason we've remained hidden from the rest of the galaxy for so long." As they descended the spire and made their way through the winding streets of the city, Orion's mind raced with possibilities. What could this heart be? Some kind of advanced technology? A natural phenomenon? They reached the outskirts of the city, where the crystal structures gave way to the bioluminescent jungle. Kalis led Orion along a hidden path, the vegetation seeming to part before them as if recognizing their presence. After what felt like hours of trekking through the dense foliage, they emerged into a vast clearing. At its center stood an enormous tree, its trunk wider than any Orion had ever seen. But what truly took his breath away was the pulsing, swirling energy that emanated from within the tree, bathing the entire area in a soft, ethereal light. "The heart," Kalis said reverently, "the living core of our world." Orion stood in awe, feeling the raw power that radiated from the tree. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered, a perfect fusion of nature and energy that defied scientific explanation. "It's incredible," he breathed. "But why show me this?" Kalis's expression was solemn as she turned to face him. "Because you've earned our trust, Orion, and because I believe you may be the key to helping us protect it." "Protect it from what?" Kalis's eyes darkened. "There are those in the galaxy who would seek to exploit the heart's power. We've hidden ourselves away for millennia to keep it safe. But now..." She trailed off, and Orion felt a chill run down his spine. "Now what? Now we've detected signs that someone or something has discovered our existence, and they're coming, Orion. They're coming for the heart." The gravity of the situation hit Orion like a physical force. He realized that his crash landing on Virelia wasn't just a random accident. It was the beginning of something much larger, a cosmic event that could change the fate of this world and perhaps the entire galaxy. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice filled with determination. Kalis's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "You bring a unique perspective, Orion. Your knowledge of the outside galaxy combined with what you've learned of our ways. You might see solutions that we cannot." Orion nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We'll figure this out together, Kalis. I promise." As they stood there, bathed in the glow of the heart of Virelia, Orion felt a profound sense of purpose wash over him. This alien world, which had at first seemed so hostile and strange, had become something precious to him. And Kalis, the warrior who had once looked at him with disdain, was now his closest ally, and something more. "We should head back," Kalis said softly, though she made no move to leave. "The elders will want to know that I've shown you the heart." Orion nodded, but found himself reluctant to break the moment. "Kalis," he began, his voice hesitant. "I need to ask you something." She turned to face him fully, her luminous eyes searching his face. "What is it?" "This connection between us," he said, gesturing between them. "It's more than just the result of the dance of trust, isn't it? I've seen the way other Eliris look at us when we're together, like we're something unprecedented." Kalis was quiet for a long moment, her gaze dropping to where their hands were still joined. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're right. What we share, it's not normal, even by our standards. The level of resonance between us, it shouldn't be possible with a non-Eliari." Orion felt his heart rate quicken. "So what does it mean?" Kalis's eyes met his once more, and he saw in them a mixture of fear and hope. "I don't know, Orion, but I think it might be the key to everything, to protecting the heart, to bridging the gap between our peoples. Before Orion could respond, a piercing alarm shattered the tranquil atmosphere of the clearing. The very air seemed to vibrate with urgency. "What's happening?" Orion asked, instinctively moving closer to Kalis. Her face had gone pale, her eyes wide with shock. "It's a planetary alert. Something's entered our atmosphere. Something big." They sprinted back through the jungle, the bioluminescent flora pulsing urgently around them as if sensing the impending danger. As they emerged from the tree line, Orion's jaw dropped at the sight before him. A massive ship unlike anything he had ever seen hung in the sky above Amalthea. Its surface seemed to shift and writhe, defying the laws of physics as Orion understood them. "What is that thing?" he breathed. Kalis's voice was grim. "The threat we feared. They found us, Orion, and they've come for the heart." The city was in chaos as they raced through the streets. Elyaris were rushing to defensive positions, their normally serene faces twisted with fear and determination. They burst into the Hall of Elders, where the council was already gathered, their faces grave. Kalis, Orion, the central elder acknowledged them. "The situation is dire. Our defenses are holding for now, but this entity, it's like nothing we've ever encountered." Orion stepped forward, his mind racing. "Let me help. My ship's computer might have information about this thing." The elders exchanged glances, then nodded. "Go. We'll coordinate the defense from here." As Orion and Kalis raced towards the crash site where his ship lay, the alien vessel above began to pulse with an ominous energy. Tendrils of dark matter reached down towards the city, probing at its defenses. "We don't have much time," Kalis said as they reached the wreckage of Orion's ship. "Whatever you're going to do it fast." Orion nodded, diving into the damaged cockpit and booting up the emergency systems. As data scrolled across the cracked screens, his blood ran cold. "Oh no," he whispered. "What is it?" Kalis asked, peering over his shoulder. Orion turned to her, his face pale. "I know what that thing is. It's called the Devourer, a cosmic entity that consumes the energy of entire planets, and it's drawn to the most powerful sources in the galaxy." Kalis's eyes widened in understanding. "The heart of Viralia." Orion nodded grimly. "If it gets its hands on that kind of power, it could consume the entire galaxy," Kalis finished. As the reality of the situation sank in, Orion felt a surge of determination. He grabbed Kalis's, his eyes blazing with resolve. "We're not going to let that happen. There has to be a way to stop it." Kalis squeezed his hand, her own determination matching his. "What do you suggest?" Orion's mind raced, piecing together everything he'd learned about Viralia and the heart. "The Devourer is drawn to energy sources, right? What if we could use that against it?" Kalis's eyes widened as she caught onto his train of thought. "You're suggesting we use the heart as bait?" Orion nodded. "Not just bait. A weapon. The heart is the most powerful energy source I've ever encountered. If we could find a way to channel that power, to focus it, we might be able to overload the Devourer," Kalis finished, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "But Orion, using the heart in such a way, it's never been done before. The risks are immense. Do we have a choice?" Orion asked softly. Kalis's expression hardened with resolve. "No, we don't. Let's go." They raced back to the city, dodging falling debris as the Devourer's attacks intensified. The sky was filled with swirling dark matter, punctuated by flashes of Omelan energy weapons. As they burst into the Hall of Elders, Orion quickly explained his plan. The council listened with grave expressions, the weight of their world's fate heavy on their shoulders. The Central Elder spoke, his voice resonating with authority. "What you propose is dangerous, potentially catastrophic, but in the face of annihilation, we have no alternative. How do you intend to channel the heart's energy?" Orion hesitated, realizing the full implications of what he was about to suggest. "The dance of trust," he said finally. "Kalis and I, our connection, I think we can use it to interface with the heart, to direct its power." A murmur ran through the council. Kalis stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear Orion could sense through their bond. "I volunteer to attempt this with Orion." The Elder nodded solemnly. "Then go, and may the essence of Viralia be with you both." As they raced towards the heart, the city crumbling around them, Orion felt a surge of emotions from Kalis: fear, determination, and something deeper, more profound. "Kalis," he said as they ran, "if this doesn't work—" She cut him off, her hand finding his. "It will work. It has to." They reached the clearing, the massive tree pulsing with energy that seemed to react to their presence. The Devourer loomed in the sky above, its tendrils reaching ever closer to the planet's surface. Orion and Kalis stood before the heart, their hands clasped tightly. "Are you ready?" Orion asked. Kalis nodded, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that took his breath away. "Together," she said. They began to move, their bodies falling into the intricate patterns of the dance of trust. But this time, it was different. The energy of the heart surrounded them, flowing through them, amplifying their connection to an almost painful degree. Orion felt his consciousness ascending, merging with Kalis's, with the heart itself. He could sense the Devourer above, its insatiable hunger, its ancient malevolence. With a shared thought, Orion and Kalis directed the heart's energy upward. A beam of pure, blinding light shot into the sky, engulfing the Devourer. The entity writhed, its form distorting as it tried to absorb the massive influx of power. But it was too much, too pure. Orion could feel it beginning to unravel. The strain on his body and mind was immense. Through his bond with Kalis, he could feel her struggling as well. But they held on, pouring every ounce of their combined will into the effort. With a silent scream that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality, the Devourer imploded. The dark sky cleared, revealing the stars beyond. As the light faded, Orion felt his knees give way. Kalis caught him, her own strength failing as they collapsed to the ground together. "We did it," Orion whispered, his voice hoarse. Kalis nodded, too exhausted to speak. They lay there, beneath the gently pulsing heart of Viralia, their bodies intertwined and minds still connected on a level deeper than either had ever experienced before. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Orion became acutely aware of every point of contact between him and Kalis. Her skin, cooler than his own, seemed to hum with residual energy from their shared connection to the heart. He could feel her heartbeat, faster than a human's, but gradually slowing to a steady rhythm that somehow matched his own. "Kalis," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" She stirred against him, her luminous eyes opening to meet his gaze. I think so," she replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Orion, what we just did, it was incredible," he finished for her. "I've never felt anything like it." Kalis nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Nor have I. The legends speak of such connections, but I never truly believed She trailed off, her eyes widening as she seemed to realize the full implications of what had transpired between them. Orion felt it too, a profound shift in their relationship, a deepening of the bond they had been dancing around since his arrival on Virelia. Slowly, almost hesitantly, Kalis raised a hand to Orion's face, her fingers tracing the contours of his cheek with a gentleness that belied her warrior's strength. Orion leaned into the touch, his own hand coming up to cover hers. "Where do we go from here?" he asked softly, the question laden with meaning beyond their immediate physical situation. Kalis's gaze was intense, filled with a mixture of emotions Orion could feel echoing through their shared connection. "I don't know," she admitted. "This bus, it's unprecedented, but I know that I don't want to let it go." Orion nodded, feeling a surge of warmth in his chest at her words. "Neither do I," he said. Slowly, giving Kalis every opportunity to pull away if she wished, Orion leaned in. Their lips met in a kiss that was at once tender and electric, sending shockwaves of sensation through both their bodies. It was as if the energy of the heart itself was flowing between them, amplifying every touch, every sensation. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Orion rested his forehead against Kalis's, marveling at the blue tint of her skin, the otherworldly beauty of her features that had once seemed so alien, but now felt like home. "We should probably get back to the city," Kalis said after a moment, though she made no move to rise. "The elders will want to know what happened." Orion nodded, but tightened his arms around her. "In a minute," he said. "Let's just stay here for a moment longer." As they lay there, beneath the canopy of Virelia's extraordinary flora, the heart pulsing gently above them, Orion felt a sense of peace wash over him. The threat of the Devourer was gone, but he knew that new challenges would inevitably arise. Yet for the first time since crash landing on this alien world, he felt truly, completely at home. Eventually they rose, supporting each other as they made their way back towards Amalthea. The city, though battered, still stood proud against the alien sky. As they approached, they saw Eliaris emerging from shelters, their faces a mixture of relief and awe as they gazed up at the now clear heavens. The Hall of Elders was a flurry of activity when they arrived. The council members turned as one when Orion and Kalis entered, their expressions a mixture of hope and trepidation. "It is done," Kalis announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. "The Devourer has been destroyed." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, followed by a burst of excited chatter. The Central Elder raised a hand for silence, his gaze fixed on Orion and Kalis. "You have saved our world," he said solemnly, "and in doing so, you have changed it forever. The bond you share, it is something out of our most ancient legends, a true union of spirits." Orion felt Kalis's hand tighten in his own. "What does this mean for us?" he asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty he felt. The Elder's eyes seemed to look through them, as if seeing something beyond their physical forms. "It means, Orion Veil of Earth, that you are no longer merely a visitor to our world. The connection you share with Kalis, strengthened by your interaction with the heart, has bound you to Virelia in ways we are only beginning to understand." Kalis stepped forward, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and determination. "Honored Elders, what we experienced, it was beyond anything in our teachings. The power we channeled, the bond we shared, it feels as though we've unlocked something ancient and profound." The Elder nodded solemnly. "Indeed, the legends speak of such unions, but they have been considered myths for millennia, until now." He turned his gaze to Orion. "You came to us as an outsider, but you have proven yourself a true ally of Viralia. The Council must convene to discuss the full implications of these events. But know this, you have earned your place among us, Orion Vale." Orion felt a swell of emotion at the Elder's words. He had come to love this alien world and its people, and the thought of truly belonging filled him with joy. Yet he couldn't help but think of Earth, of the life he had left behind. As if sensing his thoughts, Kalis squeezed his hand. Through their bond, he felt her reassurance, her unwavering support. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The city buzzed with excitement and speculation about the defeat of the Devourer and the unprecedented bond between Orion and Kalis. Elyari scientists pored over data from the event, seeking to understand the mechanics of how they had channeled the heart's energy. Orion found himself at the center of it all, working alongside Elyari researchers to share his knowledge of the wider galaxy. The threat of the Devourer might have been neutralized, but they all knew that Viralia could no longer remain hidden from the rest of the universe. One evening, as Orion and Kalis stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the alien sunset paint the sky in hues of purple and green, Kalis turned to him with a serious expression. "Orion," she said softly, "I know you must be thinking of your home, of Earth. If you wish to return..." Orion silenced her with a gentle kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes were filled with certainty. "Kalis, you are my home now. Viralia is my home. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face as your world steps onto the galactic stage, I want to face them with you." Kalis's eyes shimmered with emotion. "And I with you, Orion Vale. Our journey is just beginning." As they stood there, hands clasped and hearts beating in sync, Orion felt a sense of anticipation for the future. He had come to Viralia as a lost explorer, but he had found so much more: a new purpose, a new home, and a love that transcended the boundaries of species and worlds. The heart of Viralia pulsed in the distance, a reminder of the power they had unleashed and the responsibility they now bore. But with Kalis by his side, Orion knew they could face anything the universe might throw at them. As night fell on Amalthea, the city's crystal spires glowing with soft bioluminescence, Orion and Kalis looked to the stars. Once those pinpoints of light had represented the unknown, the alien. Now they were a promise of adventures to come, of new horizons to explore together. Their story, like the universe itself, was just beginning.